Welcome back to the Adventures of Chris and Mike. In this episode, we're going to be visiting the Historic Fort Meade Museum in Sturgis, South Dakota. Join us now as my good friend Chuck Rambow takes us on a tour of the Historic Fort Meade Museum.
Is the sacred bird of the Cheyenne people. The first prominent case is a case of a beaver plume or a beaver hide, and it's a nice display, the only problem being that we never in fact had early beaver trappers in the Black Hills. The first party of trappers that came through in 1823, the Ashley Henry party, sent a small group down to the northern Black Hills and found that we did not have sufficient fast-running streams to accommodate the beaver, and so had far too beaver to make the Black Hills commercially usable. And so the beaver trappers continued on over into the Yellowstone area. The fact that we did not have trapping here is significant because that tells you that the Black Hills were not commercially opened up until after Custer came through in 1874. And so the Black Hills are used exclusively by the Indian people for a variety of purposes, everything from spiritual activity to some of the hunting that would take place, and the use of the very tall, very narrow pines that grew in the northern hills, the pines that would be useful for their lodges. We have then in the following case the buffalo hide, which is representative of the nomadic people who were here to hunt the buffalo. Though we found that in the mid 1300 into the mid 1400, we did in fact have a semi-sedentary, a settled people living in the area who planted corn, squash, and beans. By the mid 1400, they're replaced by nomadic hunters who are essentially on foot, who are driving buffalo off cliffs in order to claim the meat and the hides. By the mid-1600s, sufficient numbers of horses had begun to come into the area so that people are beginning to acquire horses, and they're beginning to improve their mobility. They named the horse Teshunka. Teshunka, a dog, is a shunka. Teshunka is a great dog, which is the name given to the horse. By the early 1700s, guns had come across the Great Lakes. Guns come into the Great Plains area. There we have, as the guns arrive, the horse and the tribes wearing the beautiful eagle feather bonnets. And we have, for the first time, in fact, the Indians that will become a whole new tradition of the Americas. The gun wielding, the horse riding, bonneted plains tribes. The tribes that are very often looked upon as the stereotypical tribes of the United States, but in fact were a relatively recent phenomena. We have in the case, of course, the sharpening stones, the shards, the pottery from the mid 1300s to the early 1400s, and the representation of the buffalo.
Stay tuned for more episodes of the Adventures of Chris and Mike as we continue our tour with Chuck Rambow at the Historic Fort Meade Museum. And please subscribe to my channel.